For 75 years, American children were not taught what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma in May of 1921. Not because the records were lost. Not because the event was minor. Because a coordinated effort, by government officials, law enforcement, and local media, made sure it disappeared. In 2020, they started finding the bodies. Greenwood was called Black Wall Street. The name was not metaphor. It was economic description. By 1921, the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma contained more black-owned wealth per capita than any community in the United States. Over 300 businesses, hotels, law offices, medical practices, a bus line, a hospital, 2 newspapers, and a dozen churches. This was not a neighborhood. It was a civilization built inside a city that did not want it to exist. On the night of May 31, 1921, a white mob, later estimated between 1,500 and 10,000 people, attacked Greenwood. They came on foot. They came in cars. Aircraft circled overhead and, according to survivor testimony and some historical accounts, fired on fleeing residents and dropped incendiary devices. The Tulsa Police Department did not stop the attack. Many of its officers participated in it. In 16 hours, 35 blocks of Greenwood were destroyed. Over 1,200 homes burned. 100 businesses were reduced to ash. Between 100 and 300 black residents were killed. The precise number has never been confirmed because no one in power tried to confirm it. In the immediate aftermath, Tulsa officials described what had happened as a race riot, a framing that implies mutual combat, 2 sides, shared responsibility. The framing was intentional. It spread nationally. For decades, that framing held. Local newspapers, which had, days before the massacre, published inflammatory headlines about a black teenager named Dick Rowland accused of assaulting a white elevator operator, charges that were almost certainly fabricated or wildly exaggerated, pivoted quickly. The event was minimized in print. Survivors were not interviewed for the record. The dead were not named in official accounts. The city of Tulsa refused to pay reparations to Greenwood survivors. Insurance claims were denied on the grounds that the destruction was the result of a riot, a technicality that voided coverage. Survivors who had owned land found their property seized under municipal ordinance within weeks of the attack, under the pretense of expanding industrial zoning. They took the land. Then they erased the event. For most of the 20th century, the Tulsa Race Massacre did not appear in Oklahoma history textbooks. It was not taught in Tulsa schools. It was not commemorated. It was not acknowledged by any city, state, or federal body. Survivors were alive, living in Tulsa, in some cases, but their accounts did not enter the official record. They told their children. Their children told their children. The oral history persisted in the Greenwood community while the written history pretended the event had not occurred. In 1997, 76 years after the massacre, the state of Oklahoma formed the Tulsa Race Riot Commission. The name itself was still compromised, riot, instead of a massacre, but the investigation was real. The Commission's 2001 report confirmed the scale of the violence, identified the government's role in enabling and participating in the attack, and recommended reparations. Oklahoma's legislature acknowledged the report. It declined to authorize reparations. Then came 2020, the centennial year. And what began as a historical reckoning became something more concrete, and more disturbing. Archaeologists and forensic investigators, using ground-penetrating radar and historical records, began systematic searches for mass graves in Tulsa. Greenwood residents and descendants had long reported that bodies had been buried in unmarked locations, in parks, in cemeteries in sections separate from official plots, in land that had never been fully excavated. In October 2020, investigators found them. At Oaklawn Cemetery, ground-penetrating radar detected anomalies consistent with a mass grave. Excavation began. Human remains were discovered in a section of the cemetery that official records showed as empty. The remains were in conditions consistent with rapid, unmarked burial. Forensic analysis suggested the burials dated to the early 1920s. Further investigation identified additional potential sites. The search expanded to Newblock Park and the Rolling Oaks area. The work continued into 2021 and beyond. By the centennial commemoration in May 2021, investigators had confirmed at least one mass grave site and were actively excavating others. The remains found at Oaklawn were subjected to forensic analysis. Identification proved difficult. These were unmarked burials made a century earlier, with no corresponding death certificates in official records, because the city had never fled them. The people buried here had died violently, had been placed in the ground without ceremony, without record, without acknowledgement, and the government that had participated in their deaths had ensured that no paper trail connected the graves to the event. As of the most recent reports, DNA identification efforts are ongoing. Descendants of massacre victims have provided samples. The work is slow. The bureaucratic erasure was thorough. What Tulsa reveals is not an isolated incident of racial violence. It is a documented case study in how American institutions, law enforcement, local government, media, the insurance industry, and the educational system, can collaborate to eliminate a historical event from public memory, not through conspiracy in the dramatic sense, through the ordinary exercise of institutional power by people who shared an interest in silence. The children of Greenwood grew up in a city that pretended their neighborhood had not been destroyed by the city itself. They rebuilt again. They rebuilt Greenwood. It was never what it had been, but it endured. And the survivors who were still alive in 2001 when the commission released its report, the last survivors of a crime their government spent 7 decades denying, died mostly without legal acknowledgement. The final survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre, 107-year-old Leslie Benningfeld Randall, died in October 2023. The state of Oklahoma still has not paid reparations. The graves are still being excavated. The Tulsa Race Massacre is no longer hidden, but the full accounting is still incomplete. The graves are still being identified. The names are still being matched to the dead. If history is only what gets written down by the people in power, then the work of recovery is never really finished. If this case left you with more questions than answers, hit that like button, subscribe for the next file, and tell me in the comments, what do you think really happened?